It's 11 a.m. here in the beef capital. We have a lot coming up this hour. We are live with the Federal Agriculture Minister. A property perv. We look at some of the biggest cattle property sales. Plus, fresh from wowing on Australian Idol, Denver Baker Moller is here. But first, here's the latest around the grounds. We will move on now to the ringside where we've got Martin Bunyard. He's keeping across all of the action in the stud cattle competition, championship rather. Marty, how's it looking?
Yeah, it's looking very good down here at the moment, Andrea, for the Nutrien Ag Solutions Stud Cattle Championship. As you can see behind me, the Santa Gertrudis judging is well underway. There's 104 entries in Beef 2024. In the other rings at the moment, there's the Charolais, the Drought Masters, the Charbres, and also the Fleckvieh judging. But we're currently here in the Bradford ring where there's been a large increase in the number of cattle being shown for Beef 2024. There's 101 to be exact, and they're under the careful and skilled watchful eye of Judge Rick Green up there. I'm now joined by Bradford Australia's Ben O'Connell to talk us through all the action that's happening here. How's the showing going for the Bradford so far?
Yeah, we've got a good lineup of Bradfords here today, over 100 headings insane. Plenty of vendors from down New South Wales to Queensland, a fair bit of national interest.
That's excellent. And in terms of the Bradford breed, your focus for the Bradford breed moving forward in the future, what will it be?
We've just opened our books to allow outside genetics in from the Herefords and the Brahmans. So that's more genetics and more diversity. And that's hopefully going to go to the breed and give us more options.
Excellent. And I certainly know the Bradfords as a society are involving a lot more of their youth these days.
Yes, we've got a very good youth committee at the moment. They're doing an auction at the moment, opening some old school genetics, which is good to see.
Excellent. And thanks for joining us there, Ben. I do appreciate it. And all the action, it is continuing here in the Beef 2024 Centre Ring, and we'll bring you more results a little later in the program.
Thanks, Marty Bunyard. We'll catch up again with you soon. Well, we have it now. Here's a bit of a word from around the grounds.
What about if you had the choice of not eating meat for the rest of your life or not eating another protein? I know what your answer is, but what would you say?
Not eating another protein.
What would it be?
Probably chicken or pork.
Ooh. Oh, no. Any other meat, of course.
I'd choose never eating any other meat again.
No, you got to eat beef.
Probably beef. I think I'd choose to eat beef again, yeah.
Oh, probably fish, I guess, but I'd never do without beef. You've got to have beef. Just got to have it.
Oh, that's a very tricky question to answer when you're a beef breeder. So definitely you would have to get rid of all the other types.
Oh, I'd definitely choose to keep the beef, absolutely.
Probably pork, yep. Is that the question you're asking me here? Pork.
Geez, there are a few game people on site there deciding not to eat beef. Anyway, let's bring in the Federal Agriculture Minister, Murray Watt. Good to be here, Minister. Thank you so much. If you had the choice between never eating beef again or eating another type of meat, what would you do?
Well, I don't think I'd get out of alive here if I didn't get behind beef. But no, seriously, you can do so many things with beef, so why wouldn't you stick with beef?
And how have you found Beef Week so far?
Fantastic. This is my third time at beef, but it's obviously bigger and better than ever. Awesome to have all the international guests back. The R&D is always incredible, and it's 3 years further advanced than it was. And of course, we've had some pretty good tucker along the way as well, so that's a great event.
Absolutely, a big week ahead still.
Absolutely.
Now let's start with the supermarket inquiry. The Senate dropped their report yesterday. Do you believe that the grocery giants should be forced to be broken up if they're caught doing the wrong thing?
Look, we've had a bit of a think about this, and we don't think that is the way to go. And most economic experts tell us that it hasn't really worked overseas. It sounds really good, but it doesn't really work when it's overseas. And we've obviously even seen David Littleproud back away from that. He was out there calling for it for several months, and the Libs got to him, and he's pulled his head in on that now. But we do think there are some really serious actions that need to be taken around supermarkets. We've obviously got that review underway of the Food and Grocery Code, and Craig Emerson's handed down some draft recommendations making the code mandatory, much bigger fines for the supermarkets than what they've ever had before. So there's no doubt that there's got to be action taken, but the divestiture stuff and breaking them up doesn't really seem to work, and that's probably not really our focus.
So which of these particular recommendations will you adopt and implement from this inquiry?
Yeah, well, certainly all of the recommendations around penalties, greater enforcement of codes, those kind of, the action that can be taken to encourage new entrants into markets. We think all of those kind of things have got some real merit, and they're based on good sort of economic advice about what will work. We're not really interested in, stunts and sort of great sort of sound bites, all due respect. It's that we're actually interested in practical action, and they're the kind of things that have worked elsewhere, and we think there's a role to play here in Australia too.
Do you think price gouging should be illegal?
I do. I think, there's no excuse at all for supermarkets to engage in price gouging. And, one of the reasons we took this action and had these reviews is that we were getting so many complaints, both from farmers and consumers, about what they were experiencing from supermarkets. Speak to any farmer in Australia, whether it be cattle or anything else, they've had a lot of trouble with the supermarkets for a long time, and the current rules weren't working. But also, when you and I go to get our weekly groceries, we've all seen the prices rise as well, and they haven't been justified. So I think there's no place for price gouging from supermarkets or any other form of business, especially when people are going through cost of living pressures.
On that, the Palm Workers Scheme changes, that kicks in from July 1. Do you accept that that could drive up the price of food?
I don't, and there's no evidence at all that the changes we've made already have done that. I know that claim is being made, but there's no evidence at all that the changes that we brought in on the 1st of January have had that impact, and there's no evidence that they will happen in July 1 either. The reason we made some changes to the PALM scheme was that, it's a really vital source of workforce for our Australian agriculture sector. But I think we all know that there have been too many instances where people were being exploited under that scheme and not treated fairly. And that's not good for Australia's agricultural reputation, quite apart from the fairness of it. So things did need to be changed. We think that the system that we're bringing in is fairer for those workers, but also still provides our farmers with a good labour source. And all of the numbers show that it hasn't really had any real impact on the numbers of palm workers. So we think so far, at least, that's the way to go.
Tracey Hayes had some strong words for your government the other night. Was it a bit awkward?
Oh, look, it's a democracy. People are allowed to say what they want, and I've spoken to Tracey directly about these issues previously, as I have with a whole bunch of people in the cattle industry. And I understand that, this is an issue that goes back a long time. The ban on live exports happened in 2011. The legal case started a couple of years after that. I would make the point that the former government didn't settle this case and actually ran it to trial. So I know they're out there at the moment being experts telling us to settle and do this and do that. When they were in government, they actually ran it for years to trial. And I guess where I'm coming from is that whatever amount that we end up agreeing on, and I hope that agreement can be reached, as a minister in the government, I've got to be able to look taxpayers in the eye and say that it's a justifiable amount of money. I know claims are being made about $1 billion and more, and so far the evidence hasn't been produced to justify that. And if we're going to be handing out any amount of money anywhere near that, we've got to be able to justify it.
One of the things, talking to people who were at that dinner, that's really resonated with them was the comment she made about that some people have passed away before this has been resolved, before they could see justice. What do you say to that?
Yeah, I absolutely have sympathy for people in that situation. And again, I recognise that this has been a very long-running case, goes back to 2011. It would have been nice to have seen it resolved a lot earlier than now. It would have been nice to see it resolved under the former government. But now that we're in the hot seat, what we've got to be able to do is come up with a figure that we can justify, that we don't think is over the odds and treats people respectfully. But I acknowledge that it's very painful for a lot of people who are still going through this.
You didn't want her to be the chair of NAIF. Do you think she should be reappointed?
It's not my portfolio. I mean, I obviously had some things to say about Tracey's appointment when she was made. My concern was, whether people with a political background were appropriate in those kind of government roles. But from what I've seen, she's done a good job in that role. And she and I, patched things up a long time ago. So, I was more broadly critical of the NAIF when I was in opposition because it just wasn't doing anything. You might remember I used to call it the No Actual Infrastructure Fund because it just didn't do anything for years. It was another example under the former government of big announcements with nothing actually coming. But over time, it's now really funding things, including here in central Queensland. Tracy's a good operator. She's got a good commercial mind. We can have our disagreements but still work together positively.
I'm going to get to a quiz just in a moment
quiz.
with you. But I know we've got the CEO coming up next. I'm sure he'd love to hear a big cash splash for Beef 2027. How much are you going to give him?
Well, Simon and his mates in Beef Australia have certainly been beginning the arm twisting, and you would have seen.
You've said 4.5.
Exactly.
They've doubled, so we've got 12 over here. 12.
I was just going to say the Queensland government's obviously doubled their funding. Look, we haven't made any decisions about this, but what I would say is the fact the Prime Minister was here yesterday and got to see this event for himself. That's not a bad thing when it comes to future funding.
He was a good sport too. Righto, we're going to play Playing for Cattle Station. Okay, quick pop quiz. Now, you've seen the leaderboard. Ferner is on top.
Wow.
That is because he sung. Little Proud is down the bottom. You need to get 5 questions to get right to be
I like
well
a
done.
medium rare steak, so maybe I want to end up sort of.
Well, there is
down
some
there,
positives.
there.
You and Chris Afuli can play in that
There
camp.
you go.
There we go. So, question 1. Name which country is the biggest international exporter of beef?
Well, I know it's not Australia. I think we're about 3 or 4. I'm going to go US.
Wrong. Brazil.
Brazil,
Close
okay,
though. One of the good ones. Now, 2. Which is Australia's oldest cattle company? Extra points for the year it was founded.
I'm going to go with AACO. Brought it up its 200th anniversary, so that makes it 1824.
Good, and your maths is correct as well.
I was thinking about it.
Now, which former or current PM flipped beef burgers for Macca's when they kicked off their career?
Ooh. Wouldn't be Scott Morrison. McDonald's is a no-go area for him. Which current or former PM? I don't think Albo did
Poor
that.
Engadine.
Exactly. I don't think Albo did that. I can't see Johnny Howard flipping burgers. Maybe Albo.
It was Albo.
There you go.
He can even sing the Big Mac song.
I heard about that. I
Can
heard he
you
did it
sing
yesterday.
it?
I cannot because I didn't work at Macca's. I
Oh,
worked
there
at
we go.
sort of a Sizzler-style restaurant.
Oh, well, that's probably out the window now
It
too,
is,
isn't
yeah.
it?
They are. They did go broke.
I hope it wasn't the former staff. What is the name of the world's largest cattle breed? Aberdeen Angus, Canina, I cannot pronounce that, Kiania, I think it is. If you can't get it, Beefalo.
Let's go for the one that's unpronounceable.
That is correct.
Yes! I think I'm up to medium steak
Extra
by
points
now.
if you can get that right too. Okay, number 5, speed round. Finish these sentences. Grab a bull by the...
Horns.
Like a bull in a...
China shop.
Wait until the cows come...
Home.
Correct!
Yes!
I think you're on the leaderboard. Congratulations, Minister.
There you go. Helps being the Ag Minister, hey?
It certainly does. Thank you so much for coming on
No
Beef
worries.
TV.
Great to see you, Andrea.
Well, let's move on to Beef Australia.